Sega Blue Skies, Sega Blue Seas, Sega Blue Hedgehog, Sega Blue Shirt, Sega Blue Cat, Sega Blue Stinger, Sega Blue... well, you get the idea. The Sega brand has, for good reason, always been associated with a kind of mellow blue, usually with a clean white background too. Today, I want to take this fairly basic idea and try and dive a little bit deeper. See, in case you didn't know, the Dreamcast is my very most favourite console of all time. Mostly for nostalgic reasons, I'm not immune to that, but I can also make a case for how the Dreamcast established a very specific kind of aesthetic that remains well liked to this very day. So, in short, I'm going to outline what that aesthetic is, tell you what I think was good about it, and then I'm going to try and trace its lineage to modern day. As a kid, playing with other kids up and down my street, between us, we had all the consoles of the 90s and the early 2000s, so I played everything from the NES to the SNES to the N64 to the GameCube, Mega Drive to the Saturn to the Dreamcast, PS2, Xbox. Every single one of those consoles had games that I still love very deeply. So why did the Dreamcast stand out for me? Well, in the same way that Nintendo has got its own house style with its ardent loyalists, which I'll come back to in a little bit, so does Sega. Now, I personally prefer polygons to pixels, and so it was only when the companies made that leap to 3D that I really got to thinking about the aesthetics, the colours, the shapes, the general imagery. So, whilst Nintendo had a lot of warm red and brown and green for forests and castles and cosy cottages and the like, Sega had lots of cool blue and white, usually with some kind of optimistic, futuristic undertones. The PS1 was square and blocky and chunky, which I do find extremely charming, and it's also very effective for horror. And then the N64 was still a little bit blocky, but then all the textures were kind of weirdly stretched out, so you didn't get that warping and wobbling that you did with the PS1. But the Dreamcast, that was smooth and round. And smooth, round stuff is totally aesthetic, which I will come back to again. I also mentioned futuristic vibes, acting like Sega were the only big dicks on the block with the fucking cojones to address the highfalutin concept of speculative fiction, but not at all. The PS1 gave us some stark and bleak glimpses of the future with games like Final Fantasy VII, C12 Final Resistance. The N64 gave us some cool but fairly shallow tech-heavy ideas like F-Zero, and also the very cute and nice Jet Force Gemini, which I will absolutely do on the channel because a good friend of mine really loves it. But what the Dreamcast gave us was hope. Now that sounds big, but I can explain. So it gave us a look at a kinder and gentler future, and it encouraged us to engage with the world and find things to love, even in spite of rampant industrialization and militarization. So, Exhibit A. Take a look here at the egg carrier from Sonic Adventure. This shit is part Flying Fortress and part Animal Testing Lab. Conceptually, I can't think of anything more dystopian. But just look at this, he's got deck chairs, he's got the swimming pool, he's got his patented Eggman Enterprises logo everywhere. Not to mention how goddamn sleek and clean the whole render looks. So if you've got to be an insanely wealthy supervillain, then put your funds into making cute dopey shit like this rather than wasting your time with super yachts or other dick measuring things like that. Exhibit B. Here we are in Tokyo of Jet Set Radio fame. A fascistic police state where graffiti artists are shot on sight by sadistic corporate-sponsored enforcers. Sounds pretty Orwellian, but no. This is in fact the good Tony Hawk's. It's a stylish, fun-filled game that piques your curiosity and your sense of adventure. The city's pretty vertical, and since you're a pretty athletic skater, you can, with enough skill, and more skill than I've got in the game probably, get to most of the places you can see. And there's plenty of interesting liminal space all around, presented in beautiful cel shading, so there's plenty to drink in. Exhibit C. This one probably more for me than you, but here we are at Dinosaur Island from Blue Stinger. As a kid, I wanted to live in this here shuttleport with its big windows and shiny blue consoles and sleep pods. And again, in this game, there is a potentially world-ending disaster looming, but you wouldn't know that from the happy, smooth characters and the high-tech but very welcoming decor. These are comfy aesthetics, and they all led to visual representations of places that you would actually want to hang out in. So I believe that the Dreamcast, more than any other console, paved the way for that trend of hangout hub worlds and exploratory gameplay. Regardez. Here is Shenmue, a game about trying to get revenge on the man who murdered your father. Sounds pretty tense and stressful, right? But it's not. I played this game with my very own dad back in the day, and let me tell you, I had many a wholesome afternoon spent bumbling around the town looking at lovingly rendered snacks and drinks and nosing in drawers and so on and so forth. What I'm saying is that the smooth, good-looking aesthetic led to a very pretty world, and one that was lovingly crafted with enough depth that you could very well spend hours getting lost and not progressing the story at all, and not feeling any the worse for it. So that's a little bit of legacy for you, because I don't need to tell you how influential Shenmue was. But I do believe that without it, we wouldn't have the Yakuza franchise, for instance. And I might even go so far as to suggest that some JRPGs might not have become as cozy as they now are without this as a precursor. See, when I fire up a JRPG these days, I want to meet nice characters and explore nice places at a pretty chill pace. I don't want to grind and faff about with Square's latest complicated battle system. I will say, see Tales of Vesperia for a very nice JRPG that gets it right. But we're going to move along, and I'm going to keep with the idea of legacy. So I recently read an article that suggested that this here franchise, Power Stone, paved the way for Fortnite and Overwatch. God, I hope not. I don't want to go off on an old man rant, because frankly, I'm just happy to see that video games are still doing well. But all the corporate, money-hungry bullshit prevalent in these games really rattles me bones. Fortnite might be a great game. It really might, but I will never know, because I refuse to play something that's only online and where I have to pay for seasons, whatever the hell that means. Rant over. But speaking of being online, the Dreamcast is the first console to try and have an online matching system. Well, it's the first console I'm aware of to do it, so that's something. Not really a plus for me, since I only enjoy single player games. Even when I'm playing with my fiance or friends, I prefer to just do couch co-op. But yes, the Dreamcast did have some online features. Phantasy Star Online even, which you are seeing here. So at some point, for whatever reason I don't care to speculate on, this here beloved console was declared a dud and sidelined. It still has its enjoyers, of course, given that you're listening to this, but the general consensus was that it was done. So what happened with all the limitless potential? Where did all those planned games go? Well, check it out. We got Super Monkey Ball right here, true blue Sega property, and a beloved staple of arcades everywhere. Or at least, my local arcade's still got it, and the stick on the cabinet is a little banana, and that's really cute. This here was published by Nintendo on the GameCube, another short-lived console that had a very nice smooth aesthetic. You can see here that there's a lot of stuff that I said I love about the Dreamcast aesthetic. Look at the cool, vivid colours, that smooth monkey, that ball. Admittedly, the subversion of sort of dystopian futurism is not present here, unless you consider what kind of world would imprison a monkey inside a ball, but that's another digression. What I'm saying is that this was slated for the Dreamcast. Dreamcast went under, but the Chad Monkey Ball came out anyway. Life finds a way. As I talk here, you will see snippets of other games that were slated for release on the Dreamcast and found homes elsewhere. But I can't shout them out because at this point I haven't chosen all the clips I'll be using for the video, so I can't say exactly what you're going to be seeing. Told you I'm an L, probably. Before we wrap up, let me show you how the Dreamcast aesthetic finds a way to stay prevalent even now. This right here is Solar Ash, a very cool game developed by a very cool company, Heart Machine. Now, you could be forgiven for thinking that this was a new and slightly more spacey version of Jet Set Radio, because you know what, it kind of is. Aesthetically, certainly, and the gameplay feels not a million miles away. The story is very different, of course, and quite a bit darker, but maybe that's just where we are as a society. It was a lot easier to feel hopeful in 1999 than it is in 2022. But remember that I said Sega encourages us to engage with the world and find things to love, even in spite of rampant industrialization and militarization. We gotta do that, right? We're not alone. Because if you're listening to me right now, then we're at very least bound in our love of all things cast. And that's some very cool common ground. I also wanted to make a case for how many wholesome games these days, like Donut County over here, or Yono and the Celestial Elephants over there, have that same Dreamcasty look. And even modern Nintendo games like Link's Awakening, the remake, and Animal Crossing, they're giving me that same kind of energy. I'm not necessarily going to claim direct influence on this one, but I think that's maybe just the direction games were heading anyway. It's certainly nice to see it still going strong. And there's even modern games that are being specifically optimized for the Dreamcast, but I haven't had a chance to play any of them yet, so that will be content for future videos. What I am saying, guys, is you can't kill the cast. So take it easy out there, keep smiling, peace.